We're going to start by going back in history. This is the design notes, the ship and repair. Well, actually, let me first explain where we're coming from here. So the Kruger L-22 Wolf has released, and you may have heard that it is a flight blade in disguise, or that is the same thing as Flight Blade's drama. I want to explain the Flight Blade's drama to you. I want to explain why it is drama. I'm not necessarily saying that I do or do not agree in this instance. This is more for information and context, but there is a long history of CIG's communications and kind of the fundamentals about the game that makes this be a flashpoint. And I think by the end of this video, I would just like everybody to sort of think about what they want to see from the game and whether or not this sort of production works into that vision that they think they have. And think about, like, from the perspective of CIG, if anybody at CIG is watching this, if they want to stick with the things that they've been saying, or if they really do want to just kind of move on with the direction this is going. So the topic here is the L-22 Wolf and its weapon loadout change from the L-21. The fact that that is being sold as its own kit on the store and not in game is one thing, but the fact that it's being sold as a kit on the store also has some ramifications. And so for that, let's go back to the beginning. When CIG was first talking about how repair and maintenance and engineering and components and ships and their customization would all work, a lot of it was based around the idea that a ship would be many parts put together. You would have a whole bunch of details that go into the material makeup of the ship, the reconstruction, the wings, and the pieces that are used to build it. They talk a little bit about the components, subcomponents in here. They provide additional benefits to the components they were attached to, and components themselves were meant to distribute damage between themselves and whatever subcomponents are attached. So components are like the building blocks of the ship. But the page that explains components actually came before this, 2 years earlier in March of 2013. And it describes engineering and components in general. This is a fun one, so I'm going to read a little bit of this for you guys. Ships are the heart of Star Citizen, and your personal ship will be the heart of your Star Citizen experience. It will be your home, your mode of transportation, your line of defense against pirates, Vandal raiders, and the dangers of vacuum itself. And what's more, it will be an expression of your personal style and gameplay preferences. Every sci-fi fan has dreamed about customizing their own Millennium Falcon or manning the stations on their own bridge of the USS Enterprise, blasting off on adventures in space against evil empires and mysterious aliens. This is very early Star Citizen Imagine energy. Let's skip ahead a little bit. You're going to have a sense of pride when you pilot your craft, knowing that while there may be many like it, this is the one you own, unique in the universe. To accomplish this, we spent a lot of time drilling down the initial ship document that we released during the crowdfunding campaign. We've been working out what makes up a ship, how ships can be upgraded, and how they balance each other, or how they balance against each other. That balance is really key. That's huge. This is low-key the most important part of this whole thing. Components completely change how things balance against each other. There is still a lot of work to do, but we're far enough along that we wanted to give you a glimpse into how these systems work. Skipping ahead a little bit more, what we decided was that this style of play demands a different approach to items. You won't necessarily find that level 2 laser cannons are objectively better than level 1 laser cannons. In fact, you won't find the word level anywhere in the game, except maybe next to an elevator shaft. One of the benefits to this is that there is absolutely no level scaling. All the items in the game are there for a reason. They fill a role and accomplish a specific task. In many ways, our equipment system has a lot more in common with legendary tabletop battle simulations than it does with modern fantasy MMOs. We move forward and they detailed components, the things that are supposed to be balancing everything again. And I'm not saying that this document is going to be 100% true. This is an old document. It's 12 years old. Some of the stuff will change from this. What I'm trying to convey is the sort of spirit that they had going forward with this stuff and the kind of concept behind components. So you had hull damage, power plant, avionics. This is your computer. Afterburners, your thrusters, shield generators, intake fuel tanks are a thing. We don't really hear too much about them right now, but maneuvering thrusters are also their main thrusters. And then you have your different weapons, your forward-facing fixed weapons, your gimbal-mounted weapons, your class 3 hardpoint, underbelly weapons, extra fuel tanks and stuff, and then your mounted turrets, PDCs probably, stuff like that on your class 4. Resource management. This is engineering. We see it coming in. It's been taking 12 years, but here it is. It's happening. and then the pipe system. But there was one more in here that I missed. Where was it? One of the most important rules to remember is that the most expensive parts may not be the right tool for the job, and that even the most decked out ship can be bested by a skilled pilot in a lesser craft. Our job was to create a system that honored this promise, one where upgrades meant building a ship that speaks to your personal preference, rather than one that's simply the acknowledged all-around best option. There is a part in here where they basically tell you, you don't have to do this. This is only for the people who really want to get into this. And there we go. We should note that it is our intention to make all of this optional. The great challenge of game design is building something that is easy to pick up but difficult to master. You never need to drill down this deep to enjoy Star Citizen. If you're itching to get out there and fight or explore or trade, grab a factory model, add the few parts that you absolutely need, and head for the stars. If you'd rather control every aspect of your ship's function and tweak every element of its performance until it's just right for you, then we're giving you that option here. It's not so much that they're forcing it here, but it does start to put, I think, more pressure on people to chase meta when these kinds of things that they're talking about being the balancing mechanic of these spaceships are also being sold for money. Like, I think where it comes in is like these documents made it clear to people that we were definitely sort of taking one for the whole team when we said that buying spaceships could be a thing. Is that pay to win? Well, I don't know. What makes the spaceships most important, most valuable? In these documents, it's the components. How they balance against each other is important because of the components. And that was sort of the in-game progression that people thought it was going to be. You would be looking for components because the ship that you bought was great, but it's really not that great because it's not customized to your liking. That leads us to the current day. Now, this is just another look real quick at some of the things that they've said about components, how they're supposed to work. Here's something about computer blades. Are they sub-items? No, they're standalone items that add or expand functionality rather than improving a baseline stat. It's interesting because I'm pretty sure blades are now considered a subcomponent of the computer. They don't call flight blades components necessarily, or computer blades, but they are standalone items. While they can only be added to the computer items, they may not be the only place for them in the future. So they're added to components. I don't know why they're not saying they are, but I'm pretty sure they're going to be subcomponents like that. Now, that takes us to the current day. Like I was saying, flight blades were introduced earlier this year as a way to, just like it says here, expand functionality and also to improve a baseline stat, to be honest. These were introduced as a way to basically change speed and maneuverability in ships. They're components that go into your ship's computer ports to adjust its flight behavior in two key ways, currently speed and maneuverability. While using flight blades can boost one area, it comes with a trade-off, as you'll see a reduction in another to balance things out. This isn't about chasing raw upgrades, it's about making meaningful changes and further dialing in your loadout to reflect your playstyle. That, again, if you go back here, sounds a lot like what they're saying here. Customizing your personal playstyle. It will be an expression of your personal style and gameplay preferences. To accomplish this, we spent a lot of time drilling down to the initial ship document, working out what makes a ship, how ships can be upgraded, how they balance against each other. All of this matches pretty closely with what they were saying about flight blades. Currently, there were two types of flight blades. This was back in May. Precision handling balanced flight blades and top speed balanced flight blades. They were going into several different ships: Aegis Gladius, Aegis Avenger, Aegis Redeemer, RSI Scorpius, Argo MPU, Anvil Arrow, Anvil Pisces, and Aegis Hammerhead. These are the initial rollout, and they were meant for testing, but ultimately this was going to expand to all ships in the same way that they were kind of looking at making components, not necessarily exclusive to ships, but exclusive to types and sizes and things like that. So it was very much following in the same path as components, which is then engineering, which is in-game balancing and overall progression in the game. Here they say, will flight blades be available to purchase from in-game stores? And they then say, yes, flight blades will become available in in-game stores for AUEC this summer. This was actually changed. This answer was initially something along the lines of, it will follow our traditional release schedule coming within the next quarters or something like that. Then they changed it that morning, and then they got backlash, which led to another change we'll get to here. But it was important to note that this was maybe only the second or third time they had decided to do something like this. Before, they had a Voyager Direct store where they did put weapons on the store. I don't think those weapons are still on the store, but I do believe that on its own is also a slippery slope that people probably would be more aware of now than they were back when that was done, which was like 10 years ago, and there wasn't really much going on with the game as it was. But as you can see, this was a big initiative. They were introducing flight blades. This was something that had been talked about for a long time, all the way back in 2013. And it was meant to be a way to help people manage their ships when they didn't have the personnel to do so. That's a big deal to a lot of people. And implementing that kind of feature comes with a lot of questions and ramifications and things people want to know. So when this happened and we got the backlash from that, and if you didn't see it, you might not have been watching, but there was quite a bit of backlash. So they came back with a reply here. They said, throughout Star Citizen's evolution, one fundamental principle has remained paramount. Everything you pledge for to support our development will eventually be attainable through gameplay. Your contribution helps push things forward, but your time in the verse should be equally rewarded. We're pushing 11 patches this year instead of 4. We're crushing more bugs than ever, building more exciting content, moving faster than ever to make the persistent universe a better experience for everyone, and in moving fast, we missed a step. Just missed a few steps. To be clear, the new flight blades will be attainable for AUEC in our next patch this June. We followed our usual approach by offering early access on the Pledge Store to help support development. But after some reflection, we've decided that for smaller components like flight blades or bomb racks, they should be available in-game at the same time they appear on the store. The choice has and should always be yours. If you want to support the project early, you can, but it's not required. If you own a game package, you'll be able to pick these up in game currency in our next monthly patch. And for future gameplay kit introductions, we'll ensure these items are obtainable in-game on day 1. Thanks to everyone who's weighed in, especially those who brought the heat constructively. This game has always been shaped by the community. Star Citizen wouldn't exist without your passion and support, or your scrutiny and feedback. We hear you, and we take it all to heart. So, a couple things to get from this. First of all, he says here, we followed our usual approach by offering early access on the Pledge Store to help support development. Now, that's, I think, more about that over time. And most of the things that they bring into the game don't actually go on the Pledge Store unless it's a ship. Like if you look at things like the tractor beams or the multi-tools or weapon attachments, any of that kind of stuff doesn't actually go to the Pledge Store. So saying we followed our usual approach by offering early access on the Pledge Store to help support development is pointing to ships. It's not pointing to engineering or the ship components being used to help development. I think if they came out and they said, do you want ship components to also support development, or do you just want ship sales too? I think most people would say just ship sales. Of course, I think that they need to make money, but this is a really good system they've built. Engineering, the way it's built into the game, the way it functions, the fact that it's not just spaceships, it's also towns, it's outposts, it's base building, it's missions and different ways to like play the game. If you could buy fuses on the store, who's going to be the crafter that sells fuses to everybody? Because that's not necessarily just ship balance. That's like running contracts out at outposts. So I think people would like for this stuff to not necessarily be linked to development. Now, he says after that, we've decided that for smaller components like flight blades or bomb racks, they should be available in-game at the same time they appear on the store. That's this. Okay, he actually clarifies it even further here and say future gameplay kit introductions will be available in-game on day 1. And I'm seeing people say these aren't available in-game. I haven't been able to confirm that myself, but I would hope they are because they're on the store. And if there's a disagreement here, like if CIG is actively now doing things that to disagree with what devs are publicly saying in these kinds of PR announcements, that's kind of f***ing bad. They need to get their shit together and get that kind of messaging figured out and put out a statement about this pretty quickly. If these truly aren't available in the game, that ain't good. They gotta fix that. So that's where a lot of the kind of concern about this is coming from, that they're not actually available in the game yet. Next up, he says the choice has always been yours. If you want to support the project early, you can, but it's not required. If you own a game package, you'll be able to pick these up in game in our next monthly patch. And that's the idea. This is about supporting the project, right? It's not about making money. It's about supporting the project. So they need to let the people who want to support the project buy these to support the project, and they need to give the people the ability to get it in game. That's one approach. Now, obviously, if you go back to all of this stuff, engineering and whatnot, it's clear that they have another complication on their hands, and that is the balance and progression in the game. If your organization is focused on acquiring a certain material, a certain quality material in the game to construct certain components, yes, the components that you build in the game and craft will be higher level and probably better quality than whatever you do get in game or in the store. But the person that comes into your org and says, hey, I just bought 50 of these components and I don't need them. Anybody else want them? You know, that might be 5 out of your 20 folks that are coming to help you on your mission to get these resources that decide, well, I don't need these resources anymore. I can just get the component from him. And it might be a very niche example, but those are the kinds of complications that we have to start thinking about when components are available for purchase, when the idea behind what is balancing these ships and what is personalizing and customizing our gameplay is also being sold. The ships are one thing, cosmetics, heck, you can go crazy with cosmetics, but this is really reaching into the core of Star Citizen's gameplay and putting it on the store. Now, weapons I don't think are as bad. When this all happened with the flight blades, I was more concerned about the blades than the bomb racks, but I also do understand how this is starting to slip a little bit. And it does feel like they might be trying to just fit this in as a way to slowly start getting the idea of ship components and ship parts being on the store as well as ships. And so with a little bit of looking back at it, I just pay more attention to that, I guess. And that's really the finishing question for you guys is like, does this bother you? I'm not trying to tell you this is right or wrong. I'm giving you the context. I'm showing you how, well, I think some of this is wrong, like the fact that they did not actually have this on the store. Yeah, the Idris kits are another kind of thing. The Idris kits, because they're such large ships and they're military focused, it's not as concerning to me. But even if that wasn't on the store, like that should still be in the game when it's on the store. And it's hard to say, but I mean, if we're gonna put our foot down, we should probably be pretty solid about it and say that the Idris kits should probably go too. And just in general, like weapons kits, like ship customizations outside of cosmetics should probably just be kept off the store. Tier 0 ships should just be noticeably worse than upgraded ones, and everyone's progression should be to upgrade and try not to lose the upgraded parts during fights. So we could look at it that way, but what if the game is balanced around those basic ships? Those are the ships they've sold this whole time. They're the ships we've been using for all this stuff. What if they're balancing all the difficulty around the fact that we're using ships that are bought on the store rather than upgraded crafted ships that would do better? Would the game get too boring when you get like a really nice ship? They haven't really done a good job of difficulty gating areas yet. So I mean, you could say that you go to Pyro for the big stuff, but gotta make that scary first. Everyone wants their gaming company to be altruistic and don't do the same themselves. I mean, being something doesn't depend on whether or not other people are that something. The Idris is actually much more controversial because of the beam weapon, which no other ship has. That's fair, but technically these weapons, I mean the beam, like as in there is no beam weapon, rather than the particular model. Base ship frames would be good to have in the store, and then they're equipped and upgraded in game. That's the idea. I think they're planning on having the difficulty be the PvP, but at this point it's hard to see what they want the end game for Star Citizen to be. I think it's clear that Pyro is supposed to be the more difficult system in the game, at least the original release. It's just a matter of like, when are we going to start getting that? Hopefully it's with this FPS AI update. You're glad that SE isn't afraid to monetize and come up with creative ways to make money. However, you worry that they are being led by marketing as opposed to gameplay teams. Flightblade should have always been an in-game thing only. How about the progression should be your individual player skill and knowledge? Reputation has always been the main meaningful in-game progression. I mean, they're saying here, when you build a ship, we want it to feel like the ship is yours, not just a custom copy. You have a sense of pride when you pilot your craft, knowing that there will be many like it. This one is your own, unique to the universe. I think they're trying to plant the seeds that ship customization is also progress in the game. They say that combat is fast-paced and dependent on player skill. There's no auto attack or random dice roll. One of the most important rules to remember is that most expensive parts may not be the right tool for the job, and that even the most decked-out ship can be bested by a skilled pilot in a lesser craft. They're acknowledging that. Player skill is definitely part of the progression here. But they're also saying our job was to create a system that honored this promise, one where the upgrades meant building a ship that speaks to your personal preferences rather than one that's simply the acknowledged all-around best option. So customizing the ship is hand in hand with that kind of skill that you're looking for. The only reason people freaked out about blades was because they claimed it gave an objective advantage when they don't. I'm actively being a different person. Like, you could say I'm the only person in all the Star Citizen community that is not acting for that reason, but that is not why I freaked out about the blades. I freaked out about them because I think the components are important to progression. You might disagree, but I mean, my opinion does still exist. No different than selling ships, though. I digress. I disagree, but that's okay. We can agree to disagree on that. I think that it's important that they try to keep the ship customization linked to the idea of actually building out the ship. And I think they should try and stick to just selling ships and cosmetics. And you know what? Base building customization. You could do that, but the ships are like the actual cornerstone of the whole game. I think a lot of people will come back upset when their $1,000 ship can't hold a fight. I think we're already seeing that, which is another interesting conversation because that gets all linked in with NPC crew. With engineering progressing as it is, you do believe CIG is working on modularity like they showed with the Shiv, only we could do it ourselves. That'd be cool. I'd like to replace parts of my ship more. You're fine with the Wolf weapon kit selling honestly because you can look at it as if you like one and not the other, you could buy the ship you like and then the weapon you like without needing to buy both ships to then just swap guns and never use the other ship. Right. The idea of the reason people don't like it selling is because they think you could do that in the game instead. You're looking at this from a perspective of like, we need to be consistent between everything that is being made for the game. I'm looking at this from a perspective of there has to be a line somewhere. Everybody gets to decide where it is for them personally. I'm not trying to make that decision for you guys. I'm not saying you have to be unhappy with one thing or another, but I think this is where my line is. I think that ship customization should not be monetized. You know, it's okay to disagree with that, but it's not necessarily a matter of whether or not they should be making money. More so just like, why, I guess? Why or how?